All right. Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Brett Schklar. I am going to be one of your guides today as we talk about dancing with elephants, the art of strategic partnering. If you're here, it means that you are interested in or are on the way to or have had success with or epic failures of partnering with people that may be bigger than you, and you want to either reinforce what you did was right, or you want to try to do it right this time, or you just want to be smart so that when you dive into it, you'll be really good at it, and better than the average bear. Again, my name is Brett Schklar. I am your host. I am here with my partner, Don Bergal, who is a partner with an organization called Grow, and we'll talk about that in a second, as well as Mark Sochan, who is our guest of honor. He happens to be the managing director at CEO Quest, but more importantly, he's the author of a book that talks about not getting stepped on by elephants, aka dancing with elephants. So with that, let's dive in. It looks like a lot of folks are actually hopping on now. We've got quite a few attendees. So we'll dive in. First thing, we want you to ask questions. We want this to be as interactive as it possibly can be. But we ask that in order for the recording and the experience to be really good, if you could please use that Q&A feature to ask questions as opposed to that chat feature. Or you can raise your hand if you want to be on camera, on mic, and we'll unmute you. But I know a lot of people don't necessarily love that approach. So again, use that Q&A feature and we'll be monitoring it and we'll be tracking it. Are you able to see my screen here? Yes, perfect. Okay, great. So then let's go in and Grow is the one that's bringing this webinar to you, this topic to you with our guest of honor. Who is Grow? Well, we're a growth agency with a focus on working with B2B technology companies, primarily in the SaaS and cloud environments. We work with companies that are at Series A, late stage seed series, Series B, that are really trying to go from what we call viable to valuable, and bringing our proven model that really helps accelerate the growth process, creates a scalable revenue machine. And we do it by introducing ICMOs or interim CMOs for companies that may not be at a point where they're ready to bring on a full CMO, or don't know exactly the right type of CMO that they would like to bring on, that chief marketing officer. We developed the brand strategy, the messaging platform. We put together a demand generation program for companies. We launched a go-to-market strategy, and then we put it all together over a 6 or 9 month program so that at the end of that, you've got an efficient revenue generating machine that can be handed over to an internal team, or we can continue to support you. So that's Grow. We've been working together. Don and I have been working together for a long time, and actually in a previous agency, Don was my customer several times, and we worked so well together that we decided to join forces. And so my background, I am a person who focuses on brand and messaging. I am an interim CMO for several technology companies, and I've got a lot of experience running agencies. Don, I'd love for you to take a moment to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, this is Don. So I am a 5-time CMO. The past several have been quite successful, so it's been worked out really nicely. But my strength has always been technology companies, B2B technology, and helping small companies achieve the growth objectives and then eventually achieve a strategic exit, a strategic outcome. And one of the most recent was a fintech company, Australian technology, got established, helped them get established here in the US. And then we had a very nice exit about a year and a half ago. And after spending some time with the acquiring parent, I left, and now I've been working with Brett, and I am a part-time CMO at 3 different companies right now.
Awesome. Very cool. And Don and I have a lot of fun. We love engaging with our clients. We love being that partner to the CEOs who need not just people who know marketing, but understand the business dynamics. And I think we both have a lot of fun doing that. Moving on into our guest of honor, and we're very lucky to have Mark here with us. Mark is not only a person who's very well versed in strategic partnering, but he's actually the author of the book called The Art of Strategic Partnering, Dancing with Elephants. And in just a second, I'll put the link to the book in the chat so that you have it. But Mark, excited to have you here, and I'll just sort of let you take a moment to introduce yourself. And I think it would be great that after you've introduced yourself, tell us about some experiences you've had that makes you a credible person, a credible witness during this webinar deposition.
Well, thanks, Brett, and thanks, Don, and it's a pleasure to be here on this webinar. I have a real passion about partnering. I started my career being the biz dev partnering guy, and I'm an author, an executive coach, an advisor to startup companies to help them with their strategic partnering strategies to ultimately be able to create a lot of value and to lead to successful exits. So there is a number of companies that I've been involved with, either as a VP of Biz Dev or as the CEO. If you go to the next slide, Brett. And what I wanted to share with you is just some kind of stories, life hacks, tips and tricks, potholes to avoid of how we successfully launched these three startups on the left-hand side, built out strategic partnerships with companies on the right-hand side that ultimately led to successful M&A exits to those companies and ended up generating a lot of shareholder value and growing a lot of careers within the industry. So I'll share some of those case studies with you. And but maybe if we go to the next slide, I'll just start off with, why form strategic partnerships? I think everyone knows that partnerships are important, but usually I find that CEOs and companies, they're overly focused on just getting more sales. And while sales and growing customer base through partnerships is absolutely important, there's a number of other benefits to partnering with the elephants. And when I say elephants, what I mean is partnering with the biggest players in your industry. Why partner with elephants versus just another small startup company? Well, the first one is because as a startup, whether you're Series A, Series B, or even Series C, in the bigger scheme of things, you're small, you have limited or no brand, you've always got very tight and limited sales and marketing resources. So if you can leverage that quickly with a strategic partnership with one of the big guys, that makes really big impact. I've seen strategic partnership strategies when executed correctly, you automatically get a huge bump in credibility with analysts and market awareness with prospective customers. Of course, you want to grow sales, so you need access to a synergistic customer base. But finally, there's a nice side benefit to all of this is if the strategic partnerships are done right, you create some very nice pathways to M&A exits if that's the chosen path.
So Mark, just out of curiosity on that last point, as far as a pathway to an exit, how transparent are people with you that might be their underlying goal of creating these strategic partnerships?
Well, in a dance between an elephant and a startup, that's kind of always the knowing that that's could be one of the outcomes. Sometimes the big companies use that as a carrot to dangle for the smaller startup to get their interest. And the startups sometimes can be pretty direct about saying, they're looking to be acquired. I mean, in general, you're trying to grow a business, but if the right strategic partnership opportunity comes along, that you'd be open to it. So it's a bit of the dance that goes on.
Got it. Hence, dancing with elephants.
Yes.
Perfect.
And the key is dancing without getting crushed or stepped on. So that's one of the things that we'll share in the examples is mistake number one is startups often think that it's a partnership of equals, and it's not. So being aware that you have a big company and a small company and the dynamics are very different.
Got it. And I'm sort of leading here with the tips and sort of advancing maybe a little bit too quickly. But one thing I wanted to quickly mention is that the reason why we're lucky enough to have Mark here is because we're actually working jointly with a client. We're and working on that strategic partnership side of things, as well as the marketing and messaging and brand and demand generation side of things. And so what I think you'll hear, and obviously Mark's got really great perspectives, but we'll be able to give you a full picture of the partnering side of things, the strategic partnering, and then also how to build revenue and how to build a repeatable revenue process from that as well. So with that, and I kind of advanced the slides a little bit here, Mark, but would love to have you, dive us into some of the key tips that you recommend people go through.
Well, yeah, and Don and I have worked with a client together, and one of the things that we worked on right at the beginning of the process is getting the whole management team aligned behind a top 10 strategic partner priority list. That's really important because if you do just kind of a spray and pray approach, you just end up with kind of a hodgepodge and a mess. And it's really hard, especially in a startup where you've got really tight resources. Who are the most important partners to focus on? So Don and I have worked on this exercise, strategic partner top 10 ranking list, where we have a discussion amongst the management team to really prioritize who would be the strategic partners that would bring the most value to us. How much value would we bring to that strategic partner? And then the third dimension to evaluate it is how difficult would it be to get that deal? And so you rank out all the different prospective partners, and then it spits out a proposed top 10 list from the most important to the company to the least important. And of course, you can go from top 10, you can expand it to top 20, but it gives a roadmap and a shared sense of alignment for the management team of, where we're going to place our bets. I don't know, Don,
So it's an interesting concept, Mark, in terms of placing the bets. How much effort does a company need to put in upfront versus trying to engage the dance, and then if you get the elephant to dance, then you can actually commit resources to it? What's been your experience in terms of how much resource needs to really be committed in order to get the elephant to engage?
Well, so first off, I think that you have to do some planning ahead of time. In my experience, most management teams aren't aligned around what is the definition of a strategic partner, who are the best strategic partners for us. And so a big part of the value is just doing that 1 or 2 day workshop where the management team all gets their heads together on a brainstorming session of who would bring the most value to us. And we come up with an agreed, shared upon list of who would be the most valuable partners for us. But then, Don, I think the second question that you were kind of alluding to is, how do you get the interest of the big partner? And the big partners, they're looking for innovation. So hopefully, as a startup, you are best in class in innovation. You are bringing a really radical new idea, innovative. It could be innovative technology. It can be a new innovative way of getting to market. It could be an innovative business model. But at the end of the day, what the big companies, what the big elephants want is innovation. And you are supplying that innovation and that potential new way of doing things that's going to be the next big thing.
So that answers the question. There's a question that came in as like, why would an elephant want to partner with you? And I think you answered it. It's a shortcut. It's a rapid way for a bigger company to acquire innovation and don't think of it as the venture exit, but think of it as ability to execute some type of capability. I'm working with a client right now that is actually about $150 million business that's been around for 50 years. and 80% of its revenue is coming from a strategic partnership like this with a very small player that is delivering something that replaced a lot of the revenue that they were going to lose. And they're actually nervous about it. So this big company, been around for 50 years, generating 150 million in revenue, is dependent upon about 80% of its revenue from a smaller technology company that they are private labeling or doing a powered by scenario. And it's funny because you wouldn't think about it, but in this case, the elephant's more scared than the guy dancing with the elephant. So I don't know if you see that very often, or if that's a little bit more of a rare occasion.
Yeah, I think what you bring up is there's always fear or concern about what are the risks when you start doing the dance with the elephant. So for a lot of startups, the fear is, oh, I'll show my product, I'll share my ideas, and the big company will just copy them, do it themselves, and leave me in the dust. They'll crush me.
Yeah.
And that's always a risk, but nothing ventured, nothing gained is the way I look at it. And I believe that the function of a startup is to be fast and innovative. So you better hope that you can outdance the elephant, or be able to go faster down the tracks, whatever analogy you want to use. But you have to take some risks, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So just wanted to let you know, we do have a couple of questions coming in. And I think probably looking at them, we'll probably address them as we go through some of the stuff, Mark, you've got prepared for us. And if not, we can definitely hit on that as we go through.
Yeah, how much time should you plan for to get a partner and then exit? That's a great question. And we will cover it in some of the top 5 tips here. But generally speaking, the teaser I guess I'll put out there is it takes longer than you think. And, a fast strategic partnership execution would be, 9-12 months. That would be things rocking along pretty fast, perfect timing. But maybe we can get into some of the top tips here and just talk about those.
Yep. Okay. Sounds good. Let's go.
Well, number one, exclusivity. I always cringe when I talk to a CEO and he's like, "Oh, I got this great deal." Insert big elephant name here, and they really like our stuff, and I'm going to do an exclusive for 2 years with them. And I really cringe, and because what I've seen is that exclusivity just puts handcuffs behind your back. Your strength as a startup is to be innovative, be able to grow the market, be able to acquire new customers, and not be just dependent on one partnership. So avoid exclusivity at all costs. It's common to ask, and I mean, you can't fault the big guy for trying to lock you up. But I always say that you don't, Mr. Elephant, you don't want to lock us up. You don't want to tie our hands because you want us to be a strong, viable company. And at the end of the day, if you really want exclusive, the pathway for exclusive is you buy the company.
Yep. That's a good idea. So what's the next step?
Well, intellectual property. It's there is a lot of anxiety about what you share and what you don't share. The balance is that you got to share enough stuff to get the elephant excited. So you got to tell a pretty compelling story that, you and your management team got it dialed in. You understand this segment of the market better than anybody, and you're the winner. Because typically, whatever segment you're talking about, the elephant wants to know that they're hitching their wagon. Again, mixing metaphors here, to the right startup. And the goal here is, if you set up a strategic partnership, it has some unique benefits that you're kind of at the top of the pecking order for that elephant. So the way you can protect intellectual property is signing mutual NDAs, making sure you got protection there, so that when you do show presentations and some of your coolest features, that it's protected in that way.
We just did a webinar about a month ago with a trademark attorney, and talked through some of the ideas about, obviously not necessarily intellectual property from a patent perspective, but from a trademark perspective. And what's interesting and something I didn't realize is the due diligence with an elephant is almost as equally painful as an acquisition due diligence. And if you don't have the trademark stuff, and if you don't have the intellectual property stuff in place, it can actually be damaging for you. So, I'm not an attorney, nor do I like them, nor do I play one on TV, but they seem to know what they're doing as far as helping companies, protect themselves, so that A, you don't get crushed, and then B is when you do have your act together, it kind of impresses the companies that are trying to dance with you as the elephants, and maybe sets the stage that they can't, push you around on the dance floor as much.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, we had a question come in. We've got a couple of questions that came in, but one of them was specific to exclusivity. So back to the first question, the first bullet point here about exclusivity. And the question was, what about exclusivity in a specific country or region? And I thought that was, that's a good question because I'm sure there's a lot of nuances there.
Yeah. So when I say exclusivity, don't do it. I mean, the perfect situation would be zero. But in a real world, in a pragmatic world, sometimes you got to give a little to get something back. And so some of the compromises I've made with exclusivity would be, okay, we might give you exclusive in a region, say Asia Pac, where we're a long ways to be able to get there ourselves, or Latin America, LATAM. But what the key is, with a very, very stingy period of time of exclusivity there, like ideally 6 months or less. The time that typically it would take you to do the work and get to that region anyway. So yeah, you can do narrow things. The other exclusivity things I've seen is, okay, just with these 2 or 3 competitors, but again, very stingy on the time limit of that exclusivity, maximum 6 months, because that's how long it's going to take you to get it launched anyway with another partner.
Got it. Okay. Okay. And we do have other great questions coming in. I just thought that one sort of plugged in great with the timing of the first bullet point. So let's keep rolling because we are going to have open discussion. I think we should hit on these questions, but what's your next tip?
Well, the next one is get money up front. So to the guy who asked the question about how long should I expect, for to get a deal and ultimately to exit. Well, just to get the OEM deal or the reseller deal in place always takes way longer than you think. So even though as a fast, nimble startup company, you could do it in a week or two. The big companies, they have a lot of bureaucracy. They got different departments, finance, purchasing, legal, all that have to get involved and put their fingerprints on the deal. So these contracts can easily take 6, 9 months or more to execute these contracts. Meanwhile, you're spending a lot of company resources, your product managers are involved, your developers involved, you as a CEO are spending big time on it. And this is sucking resources. It's distracting you from doing your important sales and marketing and winning your own customers directly. So I always recommend ask for some money up front on contract signing, ask for $250,000 non-recurring engineering fees, NRE, something that you get right up front. And the big companies, they understand that. They know that they're slow and cumbersome to work with. And you want them to say, look, we want to do a good job for you. So to be viable, we need some money in the door today to make this work and be able to do it right for you.
What if they say, we'll give you money and maybe we'll give you a little bit more and we'll do it in exchange for equity? And then they become an investor. Is that a good idea? Really bad idea? It depends, like the dating versus marriage. Like I'm sure there's a lot of bad analogies, but what's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a great question. It comes up a lot, and I would just treat them as 2 separate things. Say, oh, you'd like to invest as well? Great. Let's treat that as a separate track. So we have a business commercial deal we're working on with you for, say, an OEM or reseller deal. If you're interested in an investor, let me put you in touch with one of my board members. He'll look at the investment part and kind of treat that separately. If you do take an investment, you have to be very careful because, again, you want to keep your doors and options open. You never know who is going to be the suitor at the end of the day. And I don't know, 7 times out of 10, I've seen it's not who you think it is. It's someone else
Yeah.
that's an orthogonal partner or someone else that decided they needed to have you more than the other partner. So you never know. You want to keep your options open.
And is it okay to ask for money? So let's say it's not that investor route, and you ask for money up front. Is that an advance on revenue? Is it profit sharing? Is it just a pure upfront investment on their part? Like how do you prefer that be structured?
Great question. So if you do an advance on revenue, then you have a revenue recognition problem and you can't recognize the revenue till you've delivered and shipped. So often it might be better to do it as an NRE, non-recurring engineering fee, that you
Yeah.
can charge and recognize as soon as the development work is done. So anything that keeps it simple for your CFO, anything that allows you to recognize that revenue sooner is going to be a plus for the company.
Got it.
One thing that I've seen done successfully is to uh, package up services in the form of, we're going to give you 2 engineers for 6 months, and they're going to do the customizations and the integration, and have the big company pay for those services specifically. And typically, that's a pretty small amount for the elephant to pay, but it serves the small company's purpose because it covers the cost and justifies the investment and makes the revenue recognizable immediately. You're not hung up on future royalties.
Gotcha. That's a good insight and something to avoid as well. Very cool.
If I could just emphasize, the key is that the royalties will always take a lot longer to actually come in the door than you think, and so that's really important from a cash flow management perspective, and also from a management of board expectations is really important.
Got it. Managing board expectations. There's a whole nother topic around that, but
Yes.
yep, definitely got it. All right. Shall we keep going?
Yes.
All right. Let's see. We got 3 out of 5. Let's hit number 4.
So I've talked to lots of CEOs. The whole management team is high-fiving each other. They just signed the ink on a big deal with a major player in the industry, and it's going to be all easy from here, right? It's never easy, and there's always going to be big problems. And so, if you expect the problems, and again, manage board expectations, manage expectations with the management team. It's not going to be easy sailing. First and foremost, there's just a difference in the size of the companies. You're a startup company, you're 30, 50, 100 people, and you're dealing with a multi-billion-dollar company with, tens of thousands of employees. They just move at a glacial speed. And so they'll bog you down. They'll frustrate your management team because they like to go fast and nimble. They're sucked into meetings with 20 or 30 people from the other side on these big Zoom or teleconference calls. And then stuff happens, they come up with new feature requests. And so where I say it's a fluid situation, be ready to tap dance because it's a fluid situation. If they're asking for something new, ask if something else can come out so that, you don't bog your development team and bog them down.
So there's a
Maybe
couple.
ask for more money.
Yeah.
I've done that before. It's like, oh, wow, that would be a really great new feature. That's a lot of extra work. Can we add in another $100,000 in NRE to cover that?
Yeah. So there's a couple of questions that came in that I think are well aligned with this question and some of the ideas you shared. One of the questions is, when working with an elephant, what do you need to do on an ongoing basis to get and maintain mind share? Usually they have a lot of options and it's easy for your solution to sort of get in the background. And, that's part of the expecting problems. What have you seen to be very effective besides a big tap dance on top of people's desks to get their attention, to be proactive, to navigate the necessary change proactively instead of reactively? Like, how do you go through that process?
Um, so yes, I'm glad you brought that up though. How do you tap dance on the table and whose table do you want to be tap dancing on? So the first is that in large companies, the center of control is almost always in the product management group. It's not in the partnering group. The partnering group is the kind of the gatekeepers to keep out the unwashed masses. The centers of power, the guys who got the juice, are the product managers.
Mhm.
And so what you want to do is you're always a force of and a wellspring of ideas and innovation. So once a quarter, you want to be getting in front of the VP of product management, the director of product management, maybe even the chief product officer, and saying, let us show you the exciting new innovations we've made and since we last met in the last 3 months. So yeah, there's the day-to-day, week-to-week stuff that you're doing with the project managers, but making sure that you have that touch point scheduled and dialed into the calendars of as senior people as you can. And with a $1 billion company, that's typically going to be the director of product management or VP of product management. Sometimes if it's a really super hot topic that's strategic for them, maybe you'll even get higher in the organization.
Yep, gotcha. So another question that came in that I think is aligned with this one as well is, and I'm trying to read the question here, but it's from Michael, and it says, sometimes with the elephants, the ones that are bigger than 100,000 people, the people you're in touch with, will find it difficult to find the right people to help you out within the organization. And so what are the tips to maybe empower the champions to get to the right people to get you the help that you need? I've seen that before, Michael, that's a great point. How do you get the people that you work with to get to the right people in these gigantic companies?
Yeah, Michael has a great question there. Finding and accessing the right people is usually one of the biggest challenges, and it's the number one job of the biz dev team to go figure that out. So how do you figure that out? Well, first, it's usually in the product management organization, and then it's figuring out which product owner, which product group is going to have the most interest with what you have to offer. That's where you got to do your homework. And so identify, that's the research, look at the website, look at what analysts are saying, and you're going to have a thesis about which product or products, hopefully there's more than one, where you might be a fit. Google search, who's the product manager for that product name, and boom, now you've got a name. Now you can go to LinkedIn, you can start messaging. Back in the days before the pandemic, when we used to go to conferences, I would go up, I'd find where they're speaking, and would go up to the that product manager after his presentation, said, I really liked it. Can we do a follow-up conversation? Here's what we do. And almost always I'm able to get at least a pass the sniff test intro meeting with that person.
Gotcha. Okay. Excellent. That's a good tip.
Nice. Don was smiling there. Someone said, is Don the singer in the band? Because I don't see an instrument behind him. Are you a singer, Don?
You don't want me to sing, I can tell you that.
Yeah. So Mark, I was going to save it for later, but because you brought it in now, you obviously went for the coolest instrument behind you. Obviously it's a guitar. Mine's a trumpet. So,
guitar.
Band buddy for life. Nothing cool about that, but hey, whatever. But then you've also got this beautiful, almost fake scenery behind you. That's just this quintessential perfect backdrop that most people wish that they actually had. So yeah, kudos on the guitar and the best backdrop.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, well, let's keep going on. What's the fifth tip?
Well, the fifth one is create leverage. Always be looking and swinging to the next partnership vine. And that's sometimes difficult to do for a couple of reasons. First is, I always say that the right number of strategic partnerships is any number except for the number one. You do not want to have just one strategic partnership because of that power imbalance between a $1 billion company and you as a startup. So you want to immediately leverage and swing to the next vine of getting the next elephant to dance with you. And the great news is if you've got Google as a strategic partnership, I guarantee you can be able to get a meeting with one of Google's competitors, because if nothing else, they want to find out what Google is interested in you.
Yeah.
If nothing else, to kind of learn more and neutralize the advantage that Google has. So immediately start thinking about how to swing to that next partnership vine.
It reminds me of the conversation my son has with me about guitars. And, the question of, well, when are you going to have enough guitars? And he says there's a pretty easy scientific formula. It's n+1. You take however many guitars you have and you add one, and that's when you have enough. And then once you have that, you add one, and that's when you have enough. So it sounds like strategic partnerships and my son's guitar acquisition strategy are very well aligned.
Well, they are. And actually, on a serious note there, I do get asked, well, what's the right number of strategic partnerships? And I say you always want to be, your unfair share of strategic partnerships. You want them all. Well, why is that? Is because if you have the strategic partnership, it means that you've locked out your competitors from that
Yeah.
strategic partnership. Because typically the elephants will only pick one major player to one major startup to work with in a particular area. So if you can lock up, and we'll cover this next in the case study, you create that leverage, you lock up kind of the industry, and suddenly you're the de facto standard in the industry for that particular piece of technology or piece of innovation.
Nice. Okay.
Actually,
Perfect.
Mark, that opens up a point where I've seen situations where my company is not the chosen strategic partner, but there is a nominal partner listed on the Elephant's website that maybe goes back some years. It's kind of passive, and the mission is to either join the party or displace the existing partner. Have you ever seen that work successfully, or once they've picked a partner, then you're locked up forever?
Well, so first you bring up a good point, Don, which is the urgency. I get asked, when's the right time to partner? A lot of startups say, oh gosh, it's too early. I don't want to show my stuff. I'm not ready. And the question I ask is, how would you feel if tomorrow you opened up your email and you saw a LinkedIn announcement that your number one competitor just landed a strategic partnership with that elephant that you were hoping to get? If that feels like a gut punch to the stomach, then that means that you need to be speeding up and doing more stuff today. So you can almost always get meetings regardless of what your state of product roadmap is or number of customers. You can almost always get a meeting with the elephants because they're interested to understand innovation and who's doing what. But let's say it did happen. You opened up the email, you got that stomach punch. Your number one competitor just landed the strategic deal you were hoping to get. What can be done? Well, the first thing is you can try and get a meeting. If nothing else, just say, hey, we've got a different angle on this. Can we at least talk to you, show you what we've got? But the reality is that the elephant's already done a bunch of research and they're committed. So you got two options. One is find a different product group that maybe is a different angle of what you're doing, which is might be at least a foot in the door, or maybe at least you can have a marketing alliance that neutralizes that relationship a little bit. But probably the best thing that you can do is go to the elephant's competitors and double down your efforts in getting a strategic partnership with that competitor.
So we've got a few more questions coming in, and we've got a couple more minutes on our time here. Do we want to have some discussions about the questions that came in, or Mark, would you like to give like a really solid example or two that could frame more conversation that we have?
Yeah, I see that the question there is about offer innovation and how do you inspire confidence that you deliver the elephant's big customers. So let's cover that as we go into the next slide. That's a
Okay,
great question from
perfect.
Matt. So I'm going to ask Don to help kind of guide us through this slide here.
Yeah. So for me, the question, and having tried to partner with SAP in the past, it's hard to get their attention. So if you were successful with a company called Top Tier and you had a great outcome with SAP, how did you get them on the hook? What was it that created the urgency for them to act with Top Tier?
Right. So the first thing we did is we ran an exercise with the management team where we did the top 10 strategic partner list. And if for Top Tier, SAP was number one, PeopleSoft was number two, Bond was number three, IBM was 4, Microsoft was 5, I believe, and then there was a bunch other than that. And we tried. SAP was impossible in the beginning. We couldn't get to the right people. They weren't interested. So we tried with PeopleSoft. They were a little more friendly, but still, couldn't get them on the hook. And then finally, it was Bond, who was the third player in the ERP space at that time. And we were able to click there. And the interesting that happened is as soon as we announced an OEM deal with Bond, SAP and PeopleSoft then immediately wanted to know more. Suddenly they were willing to take our meetings. They wanted to know what Bond saw in us. They wanted to understand competitively what was going on. So we then got those meetings, and we did end up securing an OEM deal, reseller deal with SAP. When we got the SAP reseller deal, then IBM, who was a major professional services partner for SAP, immediately wanted to know who we were so that they could form a partnership with us. And then finally, Microsoft, who is trying to break into the application side with Great Plains Software, they then struck up a partnership with us. And then as soon as SAP saw that we signed a partnership with Microsoft, they're like, no, we gotta have this company for ourselves. And so they end up paying $400 million in cash for Top Tier, which was a very nice exit for everybody at that time. So that's how we got SAP on the hook. It was an indirect route.
Nice.
So it was really that exercise in play the field and get the others jealous. That just by getting the others interested, you caused SAP to want you more.
The big companies, as big as and powerful as they are, they have a fear of, being left behind factor. So, they don't want to be left behind. And so when they see that one of their competitors, even if it's a smaller competitor, has got something that might be the next best thing, they'll do anything to at least get the GQ on what's going on. And if they feel, they'll do a deal to kind of neutralize the competitor. And it's great for you because now you go to your customers, prospects, investors and say, it doesn't matter who wins here. We're partnerships with SAP, we're partnerships with Bond, we're partnerships with all the others. And you create that feeding frenzy.
On the marketing side, on the brand side, one of the things that we do in our interim CMO role is, success is when we help our clients look bigger than they actually are. And that's an advantage to the outside world. It's both an advantage and disadvantage to, wanting to build a strategic partnership. I get the sense that you want the strategic partner to feel like they've got, that they're so much bigger, and you are there to serve them and make them happy. But the reality is, it's kind of the other way around. But there's a mutual relationship. With the work we do and helping our clients who are going from viable to valuable, a big part of it is establishing credibility, a professional story to be told in the product messaging, a professional way that the salespeople tell that message, tell that story to prospects, a professional website that makes people look bigger than they may actually be, all of those things. And the idea of developing a strategic partnership is a dream for, the CMO or the interim CMOs, because it does a lot of the heavy lifting of creating that feeling of credibility and establishment as a company. So it is a big strategic tool in the CMO arsenal as well, to really help achieve those goals. Don, do you agree, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. The the messaging and telling a story that you're really a player in the market and you have something urgent for the customers of that elephant, that makes all the difference. They want to have what you've got.
Yep.
I think adding to that, one of the things I learned working at SAP was it was always about powerful case studies that really articulate a business problem, a deep pain point, and how we were going to solve that very effectively and efficiently for them.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've seen is that nothing sells better than having case studies, success stories, especially where a salesperson in the elephant has done really well because of the partnership with you. because then all the other salespeople demand that they get more of it, and they want to formalize that partnership.
Yep. Yep.
So, and then the best case is where the customer actually makes the request of the elephant. We need to have this technology as part of your solution, and forces them to come out and ask you to play.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to summarize it. I do want to wrap up. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know we're at the end of our allotted time. We had some fantastic questions come in. Mark, you've been a great guide to give us a lot of thoughts at different angles. There were some new ideas. I think your framework is fantastic to help people think through things. I love the idea of, the N+1 of getting, as soon as you got a partnership going, you go and get more and more and more. And that really gives you that leverage. I posted the link to your book again in the chat. So everyone, I really suggest, there's a paperback version, there's a full version, there's a ebook version, Kindle version, and there's a Audible version as well. So lots of different ways for you to absorb the content. I read it myself. I really enjoyed it. It went into a lot more detail than what we covered here. Don, thank you. I feel like we barely tapped into the expertise and the wisdom that you tend to bring, but like always, when you do bring the insights, you bring a lot of that strength of your insights into the mix. So, I just want to say thank you to both of you. Thank you to everyone who has gotten such good, questions over to us.
There's
another
one other
question.
thing I
Yep.
wanted to add, if it's okay, Brett, is I've just started up a new LinkedIn group called the Partner Strategy Network, and it's a place where executives, partner professionals can come and get some content. I put the top 10 strategic partner worksheet there, and some other content that people might find useful, and might be a good place for people to share and collaborate on best practices and tips and get questions answered.
Perfect. And I think that could be a great resource as well. I know that you and I talked about that a little bit, and it seems like, obviously LinkedIn's a great place. I think those are all the questions that came in. We've got a couple of feedback items saying great job. People are wanting our email addresses, so I'll put those in here as we're chatting. Any parting thoughts, Don? Any parting thoughts, Mark? Takeaways for people to remember?
Yeah, one thing maybe, Mark, you can leave with this is, who should lead the effort in the small company? And where I'm going with this is, should this be a project of the CEO, or can you delegate this to a director of business development? Where does it need to sit?
It definitely has to be driven and led by either the CEO or an experienced VP of business development. I mean, it's as you can imagine, to be able to do this dance with some pretty sharp people, product managers at the biggest tech companies, you have to know the full pitch and the full story. So definitely as a CEO or senior executive led initiative.
Are there people to avoid? So on that question, what are the titles of the functions that are best to avoid with the elephant? Where
Partner
I would ask
alliance
is
managers.
in strategic partnering and dancing with the elephant, who is on the ass end of that elephant?
Yeah, it's nothing against partner alliance managers. They have a very important job to do. But, when I'm an advisor at a company or a board member and I hear that they've got this really great relationship with a partner alliance manager, I'm like, oh boy, you're talking to the wrong end of the elephant.
That's a perfect metaphor.
So we do have one other question that came in from John, and he asked a question of like, Mark, what do you wish you would have included in your book? And I'm assuming he means, what do you wish you would have included in your book that you didn't include?
Great question. So there's two things. I touched on ecosystems, but ecosystems is really important, especially marketplaces and enterprise app stores. APIs, really making sure that you got a strong API strategy to encouraging leveraging of your product and your platform. And then the final one is global system integrators. I get a lot of questions about how do I work with global system integrators, the Accentures, the PricewaterhouseCoopers, all those kind of players. That's a whole different ball of wax, and perhaps we can cover that in another session.
Got it. Well, listen, on behalf of Grow and on behalf of Mark and the idea and the science and the book of the art of strategic partnering at Dancing with Elephants, just want to say thank you for everyone in the audience and really appreciate it. And we put our emails in the chat. We'll do a follow-up. So if there's people that missed this call or that you think this is a interesting topic, you'll be able to forward the webinar content over to others as well.
Thank
So
you, Brett. That's great.
thank you guys and appreciate it and have
Thanks,
a
everybody.
great
Yeah.
afternoon.
Yeah.
Just
Thanks,
remember,
Mark.
it's always 5 p.m. somewhere, so enjoy.